Bang! Neves Knives. I'm Jared. My lovely wife, Kara, is busy. And here is the review on this knife. Now, I am absolutely loving this one. Possibly one of my favorite knives under $300. Or, you know, in the $200+ range. Because I think it's like $280. But... man, oh man, this is an awesome knife. But, you know, all knives have its flaws. So let's bang it on the tripod. Let's get into it. So it is a full size knife. 3.5 inch blade, a little over 8 inches overall, about 8 1/8. And a flat ground drop point blade. Nice big finger choil that's super comfortable. You can get your entire finger in there for push cuts. We'll get into cutting in just a second. But beautiful looking knife, first of all. And the anno work is really nice. Looks very beautiful. Nice big geared back spacer. T8s all the way around. Just like we love it. Nice satin finish across the blade. With the crossway satin, I guess, on the flats up here. Now, let's get into action first. So, the jimping on the flipper tab is done extremely well. I don't mind really grippy jimping as long as it's not, you know, too pokey, I guess. But in this case, it grips really nicely. It has a good bite to it where, you know, you can feel it, you know, biting into your skin. And the detent is extremely nice. And since it's a rounded flipper tab, you have no problem doing the push button or the light switch. I think I prefer the light switch, but, you know, push button's no problem. Now, it is a little bit of a heavy blade, but the detent isn't very, very strong. It's very well tuned because you do have this other opening aperture up here where you can do the reverse flick. But back to the flipper tab, you can fail it pretty easily if you want to. But as long as you mean to, and as soon as you get used to it and you really get the feel of it, you'll never fail it unless if you absolutely mean to. Like if you handed it to somebody, they would fail it for the first time. They would fail it, they'd put it back, and then they'd snap it open. And then after that, you would never fail it again. Like that's just the way it is. But it's not bad at all. It's very, very enjoyable. I absolutely love the action on this knife. I'm glad it's that way because, you know, there are some detents that, yeah, they're so strong that when you fire it off, or when you pull the flipper tab, the detent's so strong that it's going to always fly out, like they're very hard to fail, but then they're usually too strong to use, you know, the fuller right here. So I'm happy with it. That was my fault. I like being able to thumb flick, reverse flick, and it works. All of them work very well. So detent, well tuned. Now for the reverse flick, you can go up top, up high, up on the fuller, or down low, either way you want to. And, you know, it is pretty long, and the edge of it is not, maybe it's chamfered. It is chamfered, but it's sharp enough to where you get a lot of grip. And since you have all those holes, like you can kind of put your finger like right up to one of them and just use it. It works really good. Very, very good. The thumb flick's not as easy. You kind of have to push, you know, like this way to make sure it flies, but you can get it though. Obviously, you've seen me get it, but not as easy as the reverse flick, but it's still very easy. Don't get me wrong. The drop on it when you unlock it. Oh yeah, the lock bar, very nice. Very nice access. It's not like they give you a huge cutout or anything, but you have plenty of room, and it's a very comfortable lock bar. Nice and rounded. Everything on this is nicely rounded, but right here is nice and chamfered, feels very comfortable, and you can let it drop and hit your finger, and it's always past the detent because the detent ball is extremely early, which is the way a detent ball should be with a flipper tab. So when you have a flipper knife, so when you unlock it, it'll go down and hit your finger. Then it is very, very smooth. You can't even feel the bearings rolling. It almost feels like it's on like Teflon or phosphor bronze or something because it's so smooth, but not smooth in a rolling kind of way, more in a luxurious kind of way that you get from Teflon. Now, if you give it any influence, it'll just slap shut. And the sounds that come from this thing has amazing acoustics. We'll listen to that in 1 second. But nice and centered. Detent is well tuned. Let's listen to the acoustics really quick. It has a very loud thwack, and then on the close, it like sometimes has the double tink where it bounces out kind of and then catches back in. But even when it just hits, that sounds so cool to me. Very cool mechanical sound. Love it. So, ergos, and then we'll go into cutting, because the ergos, like a lot of knives, I should almost do ergos first before I ever talk about its cutting performance, because the majority of knives that cut really good, and especially if they're thick knives and hard use knives and they cut really good, then the ergos is going to have the majority to do. Well, I don't know about the majority, but it's half of the reason why they cut so good. You know, obviously the blade does the cutting, but now, the ergos are so good on this. One, with the big finger trail, this is so comfortable right here. Perfect. I don't get any fatigue. Now, back here, I do feel the clip. Don't get me wrong, I do feel the clip, but it's not bad. It's really not, because it's not a deep carry clip. So if you see this kind of ramps down right here, and that's kind of where my finger would sit, where if it was a deep carry clip, this would poke me in the hand. It doesn't. So basically just right here is where I feel, because it is kind of a sharp corner, but it's not sharp in the hand. I just feel it, you know, just the squareness of it, but it's not bad at all. Now, there's no jipping on the back of the spine, but I'm locked in, rock solid, and this thing feels super good in the hand. I feel like I could put any amount of pressure, like I'm holding a hammer almost, like it can't come out of my hand. It feels very, very solid. In every grip, it feels very solid, like you know, like no matter what I'm doing with this knife, if I'm, you know, doing a hole in something, if I'm just slicing to the side, if I'm doing a push cut, whatever cut I'm doing feels very, very good. So that is going to add to the cutting performance. Now, I wouldn't necessarily call this a hard use knife, but I wouldn't call it a light duty knife. This is kind of that mid-range knife where, yes, it could be hard used. I mean, it's technically, I guess, in most people's standards, this would be a hard use knife. Absolutely. It's a full size knife. It's in titanium. So yeah, you know what? It's a hard use knife. It's a hard use knife, but it can totally be used for light duty tasks or for mediocre mid-range tasks. But the blade just blazes through stuff without an issue. It cuts so good. Very happy with the way it cuts. The choil area, you want to be careful not to let that choil area catch on stuff. But besides that, you know, if you have your finger in it or if you're cognitive of it and you know it's there, man, this thing cuts really good. It passes through extremely well. The taper from the spine to the edge is done very, very well. behind the edge thickness on my calipers were around 15 thousandths, actually just under 15 thousandths, which is a beautiful, beautiful thing. Now, sometimes I think people, they measure behind the edge thickness and they don't know where to measure it at, but this is extremely good geometry. I'm very, very happy with the geometry, especially for it being more of a hard use knife, because it's not like they said, okay, this is a hard use knife. It needs to be 30 thousandths behind the edge. It needs to be able to axe through a brick without taking any damage or something. No. Make a hard use knife, but make it able to cut too. And that's what they did with this. And it does it very, very well. And all the leverage you have into the cuts, it just, man, it really passes through material very nicely. Now, utility cuts, it works great too. Now, you do have a pretty decent sized belly. It is basically a standard drop point, so it's not like the tip goes down really crazy, like you know, like a sheep's foot or anything. But it's the perfect drop, I guess, where you don't have to lift up too high, but you know, to get to the tip, so you can easily do utility cuts without an issue. It's very comfortable in the palm of the hand, holding it pressed up into your palm with your fingers, with the one finger over the spine, and it works, man. The tip is a strong tip, yet acute enough for piercing and for utility cuts. Is it a utility cutting knife? No, but a drop point blade is made to be a versatile jack of all trades. It can do anything kind of blade shape. So it can absolutely do it, and it does it very, very well. Very happy with the utility cuts. Very happy with the slicing. Now, I have not sharpened this yet, but I will say that this is going to sharpen up just fine. Maybe I'll do a sharpening video of it in the future. If you look at the blade, it has this big old choil. The plunge grind is way back here. So now when I tilt it and you see where your finger lays right here, look right there. You can see the geometry for one, if it'll focus. You can see the geometry, how thin it gets down to. And two, you can see that all this is basically the taper of the edge. So you see it get from thicker to thinner. That's the same thing the blade's going to do. So right here is basically how thick it is right there. And you can see the taper. Great, great taper. And like I said, the plunge grind's way back here. You never have to worry about adding your own choil. Nice big choil. It's beautifully done. And it's going to sharpen up like a dream. The grind from one side to the other looks pretty even. Maybe, you know, it might be off a little bit in this area from one side to the other. Not that big of a deal. I could care less about that. It's gonna sharpen up great. I enjoy sharpening Wiis and Civivis. They usually do a good choil. Two, their steel sharpens up really good. So I'm very, very happy with how this is going to sharpen up when I do sharpen it, which will be pretty soon. It's just not quite ready yet. But it is M390 blade steel, and you know, their M390 tends to do okay, tends to do pretty good. I have no complaints on it. You'd have to watch the cut test to really see how it performs in the long-term run, but you know, it's always done good on the stone for me. Now, let's talk about the clip. The clip works good, okay? It's not amazing, but it works good. It's a well-done titanium milled clip. I wish more milled titanium clips were as good as this. However, I do wish it was just a little bit better. Because if you've ever had the titanium clips that when you slide them in the pocket, they kind of skip a little bit. Like they skip over the lining of your pants or of your pocket. It kind of does that a little bit. More so on the way in than on the way out. On the way out, it does click. You know, you do hear it go like that when it comes out. But that's not really what I'm talking about. I'm more talking about just how it goes in. It's not going to really chew up your pants fast or anything like that. I just really like that nice, comfortable, smooth clip in and out. I never have to worry about my pants binding up or my pockets binding up or it, messing up my pants or anything. Now, like I said, this is done very well. It's done extremely well. I just wish it was just a little bit smoother under there. Just a little bit smoother under the clip. And I kind of wish that this was a little more rounded right here. I don't know why they put corners up here like that. They could have just rounded that off. But, so, yeah, not that big of a deal. And it still works great. I still love carrying it. Now, there is no milling on the inside of here. It is all titanium, so it is heavy in a good way. Heavy in a good way. It's we got a good balance though, so in my opinion. But it does kind of feel a little handle heavy, but not bad. Not bad. I actually like the way it feels. It feels very, very good in the hand. I really enjoy this knife. Now, there are some bad things, so let's just get into it and then we'll finish it off with a couple other little things I want to talk about with this knife. So, one, the anode. Now, this does come in a couple different finishes. It does come in the plain titanium, but the anode does scratch up. I've carried it a little bit, but so far I got a couple little nicks. I got one, and it came perfect. So, we got one little nick there. We got a little smudge on the clip, and it makes me wonder, like, do I want to carry and use? I mean, I love carrying and using all my knives. I don't really worry too much about scratching the titanium, especially with, like, plain titanium. They can always be reblasted and blah, blah, blah. But this has kind of a special anode to it. So do I really want to let it get scratched up? Not really. I really don't. Now, it has a cool texture to it that to me, it's kind of smooth, but a little chalky, but not the chalky feeling that a lot of people hate, but just not like polished smooth, but it is very smooth. But I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence about carrying it a lot because I don't want to see it get scratched up, I don't know. But I think I'm just going to let it go. Like, it's got its scratch, it's got its love marks, and now let it get love marked up, right? Let it get some loving on it. So I think that's what I'm going to do. A couple more scratches and I totally won't care. All right. Next thing, like I said about the clip, I wish it was rounded right there. Not that big of a deal, just a little bit. And I wish it was rounded a little bit more underneath where the clip, where your pants go underneath. Next thing, this blade gets smudged up pretty quickly. It seems like I don't even touch it, and it seems like it starts getting smudges. Like, it's just like it gets smudges very fast. And I would have rather seen it with a stone-washed blade. It just would have worked out better. It'd hide all them smudges. So, not that big of a deal. I could always, stone wash it. Man, that thing's action is so good. Next thing. That thing is so smooth. There is not a next thing. I can't come up with much. It's got big hardware all around. This thing is so sweet. I love it. But let's get into some more good things. So let's look at it. So it's got internal stop pins, which adds to the strength. I mean, it is rock solid. Feels extremely, extremely solid. Right here is nice and soft for your finger. The spine feels crowned. It is a chamfered spine, where it's chamfered on each side. Feels crowned though, so it's nice and soft to the touch. You do have the geared back spacer back here. Gives you a little bit of traction, especially. I guess it doesn't right there, but this little spot right here, if you look at the back spacer, it's really tight fit. Even the colors look good together. Just looks so damn good. But this little spot fits so perfectly in your hand right there for the flip. It's very, very comfortable. Feels so good in the hand. you know, even when you're flicking it and stuff. And when you're flicking it like this, you know, like this little spot right here, even with the clip, kind of lays perfectly on your palm. Like, it just feels so good. It feels so good. But yeah, all in all, great knife. Now, I almost wonder, like, is it really, like, because the price tag, $280. That's not nothing to, you know, I don't know the wording. Oh, it's nothing to snuff your nose at. It's a heavy price. Is it worth it? To me personally, absolutely. I think, honestly, next time, and I get to ask this question all the time, what knife do you recommend between $200 and $300? This one. 100%. 100%. This is a fantastic knife, and it's just, there's so many things done right on it that I think are, in my opinion, kind of mandatory. Like the big hardware, the comfortable ergos, the good choil, regardless if it's a finger choil, just a good sharpening choil, good geometry. Now, it's not, you know, Civivi or Sencut Actium geometry. No, it's not like that. It's not Civivi Pintail geometry, but it is a good hard use geometry, and I like it. I like it a lot. So there you guys go. I love you guys. Sorry this video was so long. Peace.